My name is Nathan Forshage, and this is my presentation about my internship and experience at UNT. For this video, I'm going to discuss a little about myself and how I was hired for my current position. I'll cover a little about the company I work for, and will share some of my work examples and the projects that I'm on. I'll also cover applications and programs that we use on a daily basis. I'll talk about the UNT coursework that benefited me the most. And finally, I'll give some suggestions to anyone that might be considering the TechComm program or is currently enrolled. About me. I'm originally from New Braunfels, Texas, but have lived in North Texas for most of my life. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology that I earned from UNT, as well as a master in education in science instruction and curriculum that I earned from the University of Texas at Arlington. I worked in public education for 11 years as a chemistry teacher, instructional coach, and ESL campus coordinator. In 2020, with the support of my wife, I decided to leave education and pursue a master's degree in technical and professional communication from the University of North Texas. Getting the job. As I neared the internship course, I had several interviews with companies, but the fit wasn't right. Since we needed an income, I decided to return to teaching and withdrew temporarily from the program. Just before the school year was getting started, I was contacted through LinkedIn. At this point, I need to extend a thank you to Dr. Betker for the work he had us do on our LinkedIn profiles. I was asked if I wanted to interview with CGI. At the time, the only CGI I was familiar with was computer-generated images in movies and games. After doing some research and deciding that I definitely didn't want to go back into education, I decided to apply. I had to go through 3 virtual interviews, all through Zoom. As part of this, I had to submit several writing samples, since the main role I was interviewing for was technical writer. The final interview was the most challenging. It was a panel interview with 9 people. I learned that it's common practice for CGI employees to leave their cameras off, so I was faced with a screen of boxes while my camera was on. I was asked questions about how I communicate, how I handle writing assignments, etc. Really, the purpose of the interview is to see if I was a good fit personality-wise with CGI. I had to discuss a writing project that I did while at North Texas, so I used a paper I wrote for content strategy since it was particularly challenging and seemed applicable to some of CGI's business. I went over the purpose of the paper, how I handled the research for it, and how I assembled all of the data. CGI contacted me a few days later with an offer, and I accepted. I started with CGI in September of 2021. My official title is consultant, but for the most part, I handle writing on the teams that I work with. All of our work is done remotely. There are offices, but everyone works out of their homes, and there isn't a plan to change that. A little about the company. CGI was founded in 1976 and is based out of Montreal, Quebec. They are an IT consulting firm with operations in 40 different countries. CGI works with almost any industry you can imagine. They work with governments, intelligence agencies, defense, telecommunications, financial firms, health, transportation, and utilities. My manager, whom I've only met virtually, lives in Quebec. We have monthly one-on-one meetings to discuss how things are going, future opportunities, and what I'm interested in learning or pursuing in the development of my career. It's an incredibly positive environment where the focus on your growth as an employee. We also have writer meetings once a month, member presentations where you talk about your interests, and member trainings. To give you a snapshot of what we do in these industries, this slide details how CGI works with the banking industry. We support 15 of the top 20 banks worldwide. CGI is big into building relationships both internally and externally. That's why we have an average of 27 years with top banking clients. CGI is also involved in space. We handle satellite navigation, communications, and operations, as well as space cybersecurity. Eventually, this is the department I would like to work in. I wanted to discuss some of the samples of my work and how it fits into larger projects. I've worked on a number of projects since I've been with CGI. One of the first efforts was to create personas for telecommunications client. The initial research had been completed by the time I started, so I worked with a partner to create several different personas based on that data. 2 of those are shown on this slide. I studied the collected data, used it to create personas for journey maps that would come later. We determined what these typical customers would want with an internet and phone provider. And I wrote up a list of needs, specifics about their business, and a quote to make them represent the views of customers. The entire team consisted of 3 writers, 2 designers, a producer, and a strategist. We would meet several times during the week. We were also meeting weekly with the client to get an understanding of what they would want from this promotional initiative. While working on this, I also created several promotional banners for the client. This went on for 3 months, with the strategist making the final pitch to clients. Currently, I'm in the second phase of a research project for a financial institution. The initial phase 1 research was last year by the 2 designers that I'm currently working with. Based on their research, they began designing a new interface for some employees. As they worked on the designs, I was tasked with creating a style guide for the development team. This slide shows a portion of the table of contents. This is a page from the content style guide I created. I had to research other style guides, consult with the client representative, and have meetings with my team. The style guide would be used by developers as they wrote user guides for the new interface. There are an incredible number of currently existing style guides, so I based mine on a couple of highly regarded guides. I also consulted with my buddy to get her input. CGI assigns every new employee a buddy to act as kind of a mentor. This helps you get acquainted with the company much faster. I was able to deliver the final project ahead of schedule. We are now into the second phase of the project. The designers are developing another interface for a different user group. Since we're in the initial strategy phase, we have to conduct user interviews. This has been going on for 2 weeks so far. This is part of the script that I wrote for the interviews. Each day we have 2 interviews with users, and each interview takes approximately 1 hour. There are a total of 7 people in each interview, but the user and I are the only ones speaking. All the interviews are handled over Teams. I wrote the script that we use, and I conduct the entire interview each time, aside from the introduction and close from the lead designer. As we go through the interview, I'm listening carefully and will ask for clarification if there's something that we need more detail on. I wrote the questions in a conversational tone so that the interviewee feels like we're having a conversation instead of an interrogation. I also have the Teams chat open in case there are additional questions my teammates may want answered. We will have a total of 12 to 14 interviews. As I'm asking questions, my teammates are taking notes in a program called Mural. This allows them to chart the workflow process and record specific notes about the user. We then meet and arrange the notes into something usable that we can refer back to. I also will go through the meeting transcripts and clean up any errors. We'll use the transcripts and videos as reference material when we move to creating personas and journey maps. Software and tools that we frequently use. Technology used. Teams is by far the most used tool. We will spend 4 to 6 hours each day in Teams meetings. Generally, we don't use email, as all files are shared through Teams. Mural is where we record our notes and collaborate. It can also be used for wireframing when we get to that phase of the project. Microsoft Office is used a great deal. We use some PowerPoint and Excel, but Word is by far the most used program. Figma is used to create the interfaces that we will generate. The designer will use a component library for each part of the design. I will go back through her designs and record the CSS for each piece of the design. My lead designer will redline the designs. This is where she calculates the distance in pixels between each component. This is so that the developers may faithfully recreate the design. Adobe XD is used by some of the teams when creating documents, and Adobe InDesign is used by some of the teams in content management. I wanted to discuss my experience at UNT and how it prepared me for my job. The entire master's program has been beneficial. There have been a number of things that I didn't think were applicable, but they turned out to be very important. As I mentioned, the work on my LinkedIn profile helped me to get this job. All of the work in my usability courses has come into play. I have more experience in user testing and interviews than a lot of the people that have been with CGI for years. Suggestions for current and prospective students. My suggestions: get comfortable asking questions. Your coworkers know you're probably new, and they're fine with you asking when you don't understand something. At CGI, the expectation is that everyone will ask a lot of questions of coworkers and clients. Save the work you get back from instructors with comments. Since you have to create a portfolio, and in some cases show samples of your work for interviews, this is your chance to set yourself apart from other interviewees. Pay attention to everything. You never know when some small thing you covered will be important. Take any and all usability courses. There's a lot of work dealing with user experience. These courses have been vital in my success, and they can really give you a solid foundation. Finally, use LinkedIn Learning to gain further experience and certifications. This can help you when applying for jobs. Finally, thank you and good luck.